Hey guys, tonight we're going somewhere hot, a little dusty, and surprisingly stylish. The lands of ancient Egypt. The sun is high over the Nile, the sandstone temples are glowing gold, and everywhere you look, people are bald. Not tragically bald, nope, proudly, purposefully, ritualistically bald. But don't worry, their heads aren't naked for long. Because just around the corner, under an awning woven from reeds, a young woman dips a comb into a bowl of resin and begins weaving it through a pile of glistening black curls. That's right, it's wig time. And these aren't your modern shake-and-go party wigs. These are elaborate, scented, braided monuments to hygiene, status, and vanity. Crafted from imported hair, thickened with beeswax, and sometimes so heavy you'd need a neck massage by mid-afternoon. You're probably not surviving this heat, honestly. Even with a shaved head, you're already sweating through your linen tunic. But the locals are unfazed. They've been doing this wig thing for over 1,000 years. It's an entire fashion culture, and you're about to float gently through every strand of it. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're tuning in from somewhere far off, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're listening from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step through a carved stone doorway, the scent of crushed lotus and melting myrrh hanging in the air like invisible garlands. A priest in a crisp linen robe walks past, bald as a marble statue. A child trails behind him, giggling and clutching a mass of black braids bound into a wig shape. Wig playdates? Apparently a thing. Wigs weren't just for the rich or the old. They were for everyone, or at least everyone who wanted to stay cool, stay clean, and stay socially acceptable. You didn't have to wear one, but show up to the wrong banquet bare-scalped and dusty, and you might as well serve yourself at the kids' table. Historians still argue whether the wig tradition started as a health thing or a spiritual one. Was it about avoiding lice and sunburn? Or about becoming a blank slate before the gods? Either way, the result was the same: freshly shaved heads covered in carefully curated hair. And unlike modern toupees, these wigs weren't pretending to be real. They were proudly artificial, structured, stacked, and often more elaborate than the head beneath them. You pass a market stall where a vendor fans flies off a display of finely coiled hairpieces. Some are short, meant for daily wear. Others are monstrous creations, layered with braids and polished stones. One even has tiny golden leaves woven into the temple lines. And don't think these were all made from human hair. That was premium stuff. Some wigs were crafted from palm fibers, dyed black and lacquered with oils until they gleamed like obsidian. Others mixed in sheep's wool or imported yak hair, if you can believe it. The texture didn't always match, but hey, it's fashion. You think everyone in the 1980s matched their shoulder pads to their dignity? Now, as you walk deeper into the shaded alleyways near a noble household, you catch sight of servants prepping for a feast. Someone's boiling resin in a clay pot. Another is shaving a young man's head with a curved bronze blade, the shavings falling into a bowl like little black commas. A third is brushing out a wig on a wooden mannequin head, carefully adding a twist of lotus petals into the parting line. It smells amazing, part incense, part beeswax, and a little bit of whatever flower is growing on that trellis. Maybe jasmine? Maybe something only the ancient elite could afford to crush into scalp oil. Either way, your nose is happy. You learn that in wealthier homes, wigs weren't just kept on shelves. They were laid on carved wig stands, little busts that looked suspiciously like their owners. Inscriptions were often included, not for religious reasons, but more like ancient luggage tags. This one's mine. Don't even think about stealing my ceremonial curls. Quirky detail incoming. In some tombs, archaeologists found wigs stored with tiny jars of scented grease meant to be applied before putting them on. Kind of like conditioner, kind of like pre-wig butter. Softening, shining, and adding just enough scent that someone next to you might lean in and say, "Is that blue lotus with a hint of goat?" There's still debate about how often these wigs were worn. Some scholars think they were special occasion only. Others argue that elites may have changed wigs like sandals, one for errands, one for temple, one for feasting. Fashion or function, daily wear or ritual item, the evidence is a little tangled. You duck under a drying line of wigs swaying like hairy wind chimes. They drip softly, oils glinting in the evening light. A servant notices your curious stare and gives you a sleepy smirk as if to say, "Yes, even ancient hair has a beauty routine." And somewhere in the corner of your mind, you wonder if your own hair would survive this climate. Probably not. But you know what? You'd look fantastic in a 4-tiered ceremonial wig with ivory beads and scented pine resin. Just saying. The sky darkens a bit over the Nile. The day is winding down. And you're just getting started. You're still walking through the sun-baked streets, the scent of roasted figs mingling with that ever-present lotus oil, when you notice something odd. Many of the heads around you are completely bare. Not just shaved, but gleaming smooth like river stones. It's not because they lost a bet or fell asleep too long in the desert sun. No, in ancient Egypt, being bald was very much a choice, and one with a surprising set of reasons behind it. Imagine this. The sun blares down mercilessly, heat waves ripple off sun-baked mud bricks, and the tiny desert bugs have declared your scalp their favorite buffet. Hair, as fashionable as it might be, is a cozy hotel for lice and sweat. So, shaving it off wasn't just about style, it was a practical defense. People didn't do the whole let it grow wild thing. Instead, many men, women, and even kids regularly shaved their heads to stay cool, clean, and most importantly, lice-free. You can almost hear a sarcastic voice from the past. Why pay for lice shampoo when you can just pay for a razor? But shaving had more than just hygiene benefits. It was woven into religious and social rituals too. Priests, especially, were expected to maintain a completely hairless scalp. Partly to maintain purity during their sacred duties, partly to show they were set apart from the rest of society. Bald heads weren't just about cleanliness, they symbolized spiritual clarity, kind of like pressing the reset button on your brain every morning. And it wasn't just priests who shaved. Pharaohs themselves, known for their ostentatious wig collections, would regularly shave their heads. Some historians still argue whether the practice was meant to highlight the elaborate wigs or to physically prepare for putting them on. Because, as you'll find out, a clean-shaved head makes wig-wearing way easier and much less itchy. So much less itchy that ancient beauty manuals even recommended shaving your head before attending royal events or religious ceremonies. There's a rather funny fringe detail here. Some scholars suggest that wealthy Egyptians might have kept tiny, elaborately decorated head-shaped mirrors just to admire their newly shaved scalps. Because, let's face it, showing off a perfectly smooth, shiny head was basically ancient flexing. Think of it as the original bald cap couture. You stroll past a group of kids playing with little wooden razors, practicing their shaving skills on scraps of pottery. You can't help but smile. The tradition starts young, but not everyone shaved daily. Some people preferred a clean scalp only during certain seasons, mostly the hot ones, or before important events. Others kept tiny patches of hair as a form of personal expression or family pride. One pharaoh even reportedly shaved just one side of his head, which historians still argue might have been a symbolic gesture rather than fashion. It's worth noting that barbers weren't just about chopping hair. They also served as stylists, scalp therapists, and sometimes even priests. The line between grooming and ritual could get pretty blurry, especially since many barbers wore linen hoods and worked in temple courtyards. You pause to watch a woman applying a mixture of crushed frankincense and oils to her scalp, possibly to soothe irritation after shaving. Frankincense was like the ancient equivalent of calm down, scalp, though it probably smelled a little stronger. So, bald was beautiful, practical, and often sacred. It was a way to stay cool under the desert sun, keep the dreaded lice at bay, and signal your spiritual dedication. And it set the perfect stage for those elaborate wigs we saw earlier. Because, remember, a wig on a sweaty, unkempt head would be a nightmare. But on a clean, shiny scalp, it was a thing of wonder. Next time you complain about your morning hair routine, just be glad you don't have to shave your entire head in the blazing sun before putting on a multi-kilo wig. You keep wandering deeper into the bustling city, the hum of voices mixing with the rhythmic clacking of wooden sandals on stone. Everywhere you look, you see more evidence of wig culture weaving into daily life. And here's something you might not have guessed. Ancient Egyptians were absolute pioneers when it came to wig care and styling techniques. The wigs you saw earlier? They weren't just slapped on and called it a day. Oh no, they required a careful regimen worthy of a modern-day hair salon, with oils, combing rituals, and even ancient hairsprays. Your guide today is a wig maker named Nefru, a patient woman with steady hands and a calm smile. She's setting up her tools, bronze combs with finely spaced teeth, little bowls of scented oils, and a carefully prepared resin mix. Kind of like today's hair gel, but stickier and probably more challenging to wash out. Nefru explains that wig maintenance started with cleansing the scalp and removing any leftover oils or sweat, often using a mild clay-based soap or even a mix of natron, basically ancient baking soda. She lets you peek inside her work basket where you spot some miniature sticks and brushes, used for teasing out tangles and separating the curls. She pauses, tilting her head. You wouldn't want to be caught outside with a tangled wig in the desert wind. That's a quick way to lose your status. You can almost hear the gentle warning tone underneath her words. A bad hair day here wasn't just embarrassing, it was socially costly. And it wasn't just about the practical. Wigs had to smell nice too. Egyptians were obsessed with fragrance, and wig wearers often scented their hairpieces with fragrant oils made from jasmine, myrrh, or even blue lotus flowers. Blue lotus, by the way, had the added bonus of mild sedative properties. So, if you were getting your wig oiled and styled after a long day, there's a good chance you might drift off into a peaceful nap during the process. There's an amusing tidbit here. Some wig oilers added crushed pearls or powdered gold to their mixtures. Because why not? If your hair can't literally sparkle in the sunlight, what's the point of living? Historians still debate whether these sparkly additives were common or just a luxury for the elite. But given the archaeological evidence of pearl dust found in tombs near wig cases, it's safe to say that shine was definitely in vogue. The wig-making process itself was incredibly meticulous. Hair strands were carefully woven into a fine mesh base, often made from plant fibers or linen threads, and then attached with resin to hold everything in place. Some wigs were so intricately braided that they could take days to complete. Imagine spending all that time on something that might be worn only once or twice. To help preserve these masterpieces, owners used special wig stands shaped like human heads carved out of wood or pottery. These stands kept the wigs aired out and in shape, preventing them from flattening or developing unpleasant odors. And when it came time to clean a wig, the process was just as involved, often requiring soaking in fragrant water and delicate combing. You notice a young apprentice trying to imitate Nefru's smooth motions, but his hands tremble a bit. Wig making was an art, and not everyone could master it. Here's a fascinating debate among Egyptologists. Some argue that wig makers had secret recipes for their oils and resins, closely guarded like royal secrets. Others believe these formulas were shared more openly within certain guilds or families. Regardless, what's clear is that wig care was a form of self-care, a slow, soothing ritual designed to pamper the scalp and hair alike. If only your Monday morning routine could be this elegant and relaxing. You imagine yourself sitting back as Nefru carefully oils your wig, the warm scent of jasmine filling the air, your eyelids getting heavier by the second. It's not just grooming, it's a gentle lullaby in resin and scent. You've spent some time now absorbing the art of wig care, but here's a twist. The wigs themselves weren't always made from human hair. In fact, ancient Egyptians were creative when it came to sourcing their hair, and some of their choices might surprise you. While many wigs were indeed crafted from human hair, collected carefully, braided, and woven, The wealthiest wig wearers could afford exotic alternatives. Animal hair was a popular option, especially from goats, sheep, or even horses. The coarse texture sometimes made the wigs more durable, perfect for the desert climate's wear and tear. You might think of this as ancient, vegan hair, a clever substitute when human locks were scarce or too expensive. Interestingly, some wigs even incorporated plant fibers or palm leaves, stiffened with resin to hold shapes that human or animal hair couldn't quite manage. You can picture elaborate, almost architectural wigs that resembled miniature gardens atop their wearers' heads. Some were shaped like lotus flowers, others like braided crowns, and yes, there were even those fashioned into shapes of sacred animals like falcons or cobras, blending beauty with symbolism. You might wonder, how did people prevent these elaborate wigs from becoming uncomfortable or unbearably heavy? Turns out, many wigs had padded bases, layers of linen or soft material placed under the hair, to cushion the scalp. The base also helped distribute weight evenly, so no one had to worry about neck cramps after a royal event. And speaking of weight, some wigs were so dense they reportedly weighed several pounds. Imagine lugging that around on a hot day, while also trying to navigate crowded market streets or participate in religious ceremonies. It's a wonder how anyone managed without a good neck massage afterward. There's an intriguing academic debate about whether these heavier wigs were worn daily or reserved strictly for special occasions. Some archaeologists argue that lighter, simpler wigs were everyday wear, while the more elaborate and heavier versions were for festivals and temple rituals. You might chuckle at the image of a dignified pharaoh or noblewoman trying to keep a 5-pound wig balanced while walking down uneven temple stairs. Balance must have been an unspoken skill passed down like a secret wig-wearing code. Another quirky fact, wig wearers often decorated their hairpieces with beads, gold threads, and even tiny shells. These little adornments weren't just for show. They had symbolic meanings, ranging from protection against evil spirits to declarations of social rank. Wigs were so central to identity that in some tomb paintings, gods and mortals alike are shown wearing them. It's as if a good wig wasn't just a fashion statement, but a spiritual shield. One of the more amusing fringe theories is that some wigs were intentionally made to look messy or unkempt, mimicking the natural hair of desert animals, possibly to invoke protective qualities or to show humility before the gods. Whether that was a widespread trend or a few eccentric wig makers experimenting remains a matter of debate. For now, you're left imagining the ancient streets bustling with people wearing all sorts of hair, natural, synthetic, simple, or stunningly elaborate. All of it woven with care, history, and a splash of artistry. If you think your morning hair has challenges, just be glad you don't have to maintain a wig made of palm fibers topped with golden shells while wandering the sun-baked sands. As you continue wandering, your thoughts drift to the daily rituals that surrounded wig wearing. It wasn't just about putting a wig on and heading out the door. No, there was a whole morning ceremony to make sure that wigs stayed fresh and looked flawless all day. First, you'd start with a freshly shaved or clean scalp, naturally. Next, the wig had to be positioned perfectly. Unlike today's clip-on pieces, these wigs sat on a resin-coated base that needed to be carefully aligned to the natural hairline or the bare scalp, if you were one of the many who shaved regularly. Wig wearers had to learn the subtle art of wig placement, which required some finesse, or else the whole look could tilt or slip at the worst possible moment. Then came the brushing and styling. Bronze combs were the tools of choice, often elaborately decorated and passed down through generations. These combs could double as status symbols, sometimes inlaid with gold or precious stones. The gentle clicking sound of combs teasing out tangles was probably a familiar background noise in many homes. Next, scented oils and pomades entered the scene. These were carefully applied not just to the wig itself but also to the scalp underneath. Some mixtures were meant to soothe, others to repel pesky insects, and a few even claimed to promote hair growth for the natural locks beneath. The oils were often perfumed with exotic ingredients like myrrh or cinnamon, lending a faint, pleasant aroma that lingered throughout the day. Interestingly, many wig owners followed a practice of massaging their scalps regularly during wig wear, partly to maintain comfort under the wig and partly because scalp massage was believed to improve circulation and overall health. You can almost hear a gentle hum as people went about their morning routines, rubbing oils in circular motions while their wigs were styled. There's a curious detail about wig upkeep you might not expect. Some ancient texts suggest that wig wearers used a mixture of crocodile dung and natron as a cleaning agent. Now, before you cringe, historians still argue whether this was a widespread practice or just an unlucky rumor. But given crocodile dung's strong alkaline properties, it might have been surprisingly effective, just not the kind of thing you'd want to sniff up close. Wigs weren't just about looks, they played a social role too. Wearing a well-maintained wig marked you as belonging to the upper echelons of society. In fact, some workers and common folk even wore simpler, shorter wigs as a sign of their trade or community affiliation. This makes wigs kind of like ancient uniforms, indicating not just wealth but occupation and sometimes even political allegiance. There was also a practical element. Wigs protected the scalp from sunburn and helped keep sand and dust out of the hair. Remember, the desert wind could turn any uncovered scalp into a mini sandstorm playground. One particularly charming bit: some Egyptian women used tiny gold pins to secure their wigs, not just for function but as delicate jewelry. Losing one was probably akin to dropping a diamond earring today, causing mild panic and frantic searching under cushions. As you imagine this elaborate wig ritual, you realize how much care and intention went into daily grooming. Far from being a quick fix, it was a slow, soothing practice, an ancient moment of self-care in the midst of bustling life. Your next stop promises even more about how wigs fit into bigger cultural stories. But for now, you breathe in the scent of jasmine oil, close your eyes for a moment, and appreciate the quiet dignity of a well-kept wig. You're starting to notice that wigs weren't just about style or comfort, they were deeply woven into the social fabric of ancient Egypt. Wearing the right wig sent a clear message, almost like flashing a badge or donning a uniform in modern times. And not everyone's wig was created equal. For starters, color mattered. While most wigs were black, imitating the natural hair color preferred in Egyptian society, some noble folks experimented with dyes. You might be surprised to learn that bright reds and even blonde hues occasionally appeared, especially in funerary wigs meant for the afterlife. This was part practical, part symbolic. Blonde hair was rare, so sporting it might have been a way to emulate foreign elites or gods. Gender played its part too. While both men and women wore wigs, women's were often more elaborate, with long, flowing styles or intricate braids. Men's wigs, on the other hand, tended to be shorter and simpler, though high-ranking men could sport more decorated versions. And priests? They often shaved their heads completely but wore wigs during ceremonies, connecting them visually to their divine duties. You might picture the scene in a bustling marketplace where wig sellers hawked their wares, calling out the latest styles. Some wig shops even offered "try before you buy" sessions, where customers could sample different wig styles, adjusting them with oils and resins to find the perfect fit. Think of it as the ancient version of a hair salon consultation, minus the blow dryer. An interesting fringe idea suggests some Egyptians may have worn wigs as part of a form of social camouflage, blending in with different communities or hiding personal identity during festivals. Historians still argue whether this was common or limited to specific groups like actors or ritual performers. Also, wigs could signify mourning or celebration. For example, during certain festivals, people might switch from their everyday wigs to special festival wigs, adorned with beads, gold threads, or even feathers. The festive atmosphere wasn't just in the music and dancing, it showed right on the heads of the participants. You can almost hear the faint rustling of robes as a procession passes by, heads bobbing slightly under the weight of their ornate wigs. Some might be heavy, but they moved with grace, a testament to the wearer's poise and status. And then there's the practical side again. Egyptians often coated their wigs with a sticky resin that not only held the hair in place but acted as a shield against the relentless desert heat and dust storms. It was a kind of early weatherproofing. Not the most comfortable in the heat, but effective. There's also the curious case of children and wigs. While adults were the main wig wearers, some evidence suggests that children from wealthy families wore tiny wigs, maybe to protect their sensitive scalps or mark them as part of elite society. The notion of a toddler with a miniature braided wig might make you smile. Through all this, wigs were far more than mere fashion accessories. They were a living language, telling stories of identity, culture, and even politics, all while gently swaying with every step. Now, take a moment to imagine yourself walking alongside this crowd, the scent of myrrh and resin thick in the air, the steady click of combs and soft rustle of wigs forming an oddly soothing soundtrack to your day. You've probably noticed that keeping wigs in pristine condition was no easy feat in a land filled with heat, sand, and the occasional curious critter. So, how exactly did ancient Egyptians clean and maintain their prized hairpieces? You're about to find out, and it's surprisingly hands-on. First off, wigs needed regular cleaning. Since these pieces were worn over long periods, dust, sweat, and oils would accumulate, making them less fresh and more prone to damage. So, the wig caretakers, often family members or professional hairdressers, developed their own cleaning rituals. This included gentle brushing to remove loose dirt and tiny debris. But brushing alone wouldn't cut it. They employed special mixtures made from natural ingredients like crushed plant resins, water, and a pinch of natron, a kind of natural soda ash found in the Nile Delta. Natron was popular for its mild antiseptic and drying properties. The wig would be soaked briefly in this mixture to cleanse and deodorize it. Afterward, it was carefully rinsed and the excess water wrung out. Now here's a quirky bit. Some wig owners used scented animal fats as conditioning agents. Yes, fats. You might wrinkle your nose, but in the dry desert air, this method kept the hair fibers soft and pliable. The fat also added a subtle sheen, helping the wig catch the light beautifully during ceremonies or outdoor events. Historians still argue whether this practice was widespread or mostly limited to high-status individuals. Either way, the idea of rubbing animal fat on a wig sounds like a spa treatment gone wild, yet it clearly worked. After cleaning, wigs were dried slowly, often stretched on wooden frames to preserve their shape. Air drying was the norm. No blow dryers back then, so wig maintenance took time and patience, turning it into a kind of ritual itself. You might picture early stylists gently reshaping the curls or braids as the wig dried, carefully arranging each strand. And let's not forget about storage. When not in use, wigs were wrapped in fine linen cloth to protect them from dust and insects. Some wealthy owners even kept their wigs in ornate wooden boxes lined with fragrant herbs like lavender or rosemary. This added an extra layer of protection and a pleasant aroma to greet them when they returned. Speaking of critters, you might laugh at the thought of bugs making a home in wigs, but it was a real problem. To combat this, the Egyptians sometimes treated their wigs with natural insect repellents, mixtures of oils and resins that kept unwelcome guests at bay. This added a slightly sticky texture to the hair but was a small price to pay for peace of mind. Wig cleaning was more than just maintenance. It was an art form, a calming, tactile experience that tied the wearer to a long tradition of care and beauty. It probably felt like a mini spa day, albeit with more sand and fewer cucumbers. Imagine now the scene: the quiet brushing sound, the faint scent of herbal oils, the gentle reshaping of braided strands, and the satisfying ritual of wrapping the wig in linen after a good cleaning. It's a slow, soothing rhythm that's as much about ceremony as hygiene. And while you're picturing that, take comfort in knowing that even thousands of years ago, people found time to care for themselves in small, meaningful ways, one gentle brush stroke at a time. You might think wigs were just about appearance, but in ancient Egypt, they were also a canvas for some surprising creativity and symbolism. Today, you'll learn how wigs became living art and even spiritual tools. For starters, wigs came in a dazzling variety of styles, each with its own meaning and purpose. There were simple shortcuts for everyday wear, elaborate braided masterpieces for special occasions, and even wigs that mimicked the look of natural hair so closely that only experts could tell the difference. Some wigs were adorned with beads, gold threads, or tiny shells, turning them into miniature treasure chests perched atop the head. A fascinating fringe theory suggests some wigs featured strands infused with crushed gemstones or metallic powders to shimmer subtly in sunlight or candlelight. Historians still argue whether this was a widespread practice or limited to temple priests and royalty, But imagine how magical that subtle sparkle must have felt during twilight ceremonies. Symbolism also played a huge role. Certain wig styles signaled religious affiliation or social rank. For example, the Nubian wig, characterized by tight, short curls, was popular among courtiers and carried connotations of foreign influence and prestige. Wearing such a wig could subtly convey political alliances or cultural openness. Interestingly, the color black, which dominated wig styles, wasn't just about natural imitation. It also symbolized fertility, regeneration, and the rich, fertile soil of the Nile. Wearing a black wig was, in a way, a daily nod to the life-giving powers of the river. Meanwhile, white wigs were rarer but associated with purity and ritual purity, often worn by priests during sacred ceremonies. You might chuckle at the idea that some wigs were built so large and heavy they required tiny hidden cushions underneath for comfort. No wonder some wearers moved with a slow, measured grace. It was part necessity, part showmanship. Even children got in on the style game. Evidence shows that young boys sometimes wore wigs shaped like a sidelock of youth, a distinctive style signaling their age and status as heirs or apprentices. You could say wigs were part of growing up in Egypt, not just adult vanity. And of course, the gods themselves were often depicted wearing elaborate wigs or headdresses, linking human hair fashions to divine imagery. Some scholars argue that human wig styles evolved in part to emulate the grandeur of these divine coiffures. This connection to the spiritual world meant that wigs could be treated as sacred objects. Priests and temple workers sometimes ritually purified or blessed their wigs before wearing them, adding an extra layer of meaning beyond the physical. Imagine yourself standing in a dimly lit temple, the flicker of oil lamps casting shifting shadows on faces crowned with glowing wigs. The hairs shimmer faintly with powdered minerals, catching the sacred light as priests move with reverent calm. It's humbling to realize that these hairpieces, so delicate and ornate, were more than just accessories. They were stories worn on the head, chapters of identity, faith, and artistry woven into every strand. As you settle deeper into this quiet moment, imagine running your fingers lightly through the intricate braids and beads, feeling the history and spirit embedded in every twist. Now, you might wonder how wigs fit into the everyday lives of common Egyptians, not just the pharaohs and priests. Surprisingly, wigs were surprisingly accessible, though quality and style varied widely across the social spectrum. For many working-class Egyptians, wigs were simpler, often made from cheaper materials like human hair mixed with plant fibers or even wool from goats. These wigs didn't boast the luxurious braids or precious decorations seen in palaces, but they served the same practical purposes: protection from the sun, hygiene, and social signaling. You can almost picture a craftsman in a dusty village workshop, carefully weaving strands of hair and fiber, humming softly as he twists and knots. Wig making was a skilled trade, sometimes passed down through generations, blending artistry with practical know-how. One quirky fact: some poor Egyptians reportedly used wigs to hide patchy or shaved heads caused by illnesses or lice infestations. This subtle disguise was an early form of confidence boosting, because who wants to parade around with a bare scalp in the heat? Historians still argue whether wig wearing was fully embraced by all social classes or if some groups viewed them as symbols of vanity or elitism. Evidence suggests attitudes varied by region and era, with some communities favoring natural hair or shaved heads instead. In bustling cities like Thebes or Memphis, wig shops dotted the streets, offering everything from simple styles to elaborate designs. Wigs could be rented for special events, making fancy hairpieces temporarily affordable to a wider audience. Think about the daily bustle as women and men visited these shops to get fitted or have their wigs adjusted. The air filled with scents of fragrant oils and resins, mingling with the chatter of customers and the rhythmic tapping of wooden combs. Interestingly, wigs also played a role in professions. Actors, dancers, and musicians wore special wigs to embody characters or convey status during performances. This theatrical use of wigs added layers of meaning, turning hair into a tool of storytelling. And for farmers or laborers, wearing a wig could mean less sunburn and easier maintenance compared to natural hair, especially when the desert's sun beat down relentlessly. Picture yourself in a small marketplace, where a mix of simple and ornate wigs lie side by side, their textures and colors creating a silent tapestry of the city's social fabric. As you breathe in the imagined scents and sounds, you realize wigs were woven into every aspect of Egyptian life, not just for show, but for function, comfort, and identity. So next time you think about ancient hair, remember it wasn't just about looking good. It was about fitting in, standing out, protecting yourself, and maybe, just maybe, hiding a secret or two. As your thoughts drift through the lives of everyday Egyptians and their wigs, let's pause and consider the fascinating materials they used to build these masterpieces. You might assume all wigs were made from human hair, but the reality is delightfully diverse and a bit surprising. Human hair was prized, yes, but not always easy to come by. So wig makers experimented with all kinds of fibers, from the familiar to the unexpected. Wool from goats and sheep was sometimes woven in, especially for cheaper or novelty wigs. Flax fibers, familiar from linen production, were occasionally twisted to add volume or structure. One intriguing fringe theory suggests that in some ceremonial wigs, strands of plant fiber were soaked in resin and hardened to mimic stiff feathers or scales. Historians still argue whether this technique was widespread or limited to ritualistic use, but the thought of a wig doubling as a costume piece is amusing and a little theatrical. Animal hair, like that of horses or donkeys, also made appearances, mixed into human hair to add texture or color variation. This might sound odd, but in a time before synthetic dyes, such mixes helped create a range of natural hues from deep black to soft browns and grays. You can almost see the wig maker sorting through piles of hair and fiber, testing strands by feel and color, creating subtle gradients in the final product. It was a tactile art, demanding patience and an eye for detail. And don't forget the scented oils and balms applied to these materials. Beyond cleansing, these products helped preserve wig fibers from drying out or becoming brittle in the harsh Egyptian climate. Some oils had natural antibacterial properties, acting as primitive preservatives. There's even evidence that wigs were occasionally treated with mild insect-repelling substances, like cedarwood oil or crushed herbs, to keep pests at bay. Imagine the faint piney scent lingering around the wearer, adding a quiet, natural fragrance to their presence. The textures must have been fascinating, soft human hair blending with coarse goat wool, the occasional stiffened plant fiber adding structure, all brought together with fragrant oils. Wearing one was not just about fashion, it was a full sensory experience. Picture the wig maker dipping fibers into warm resin, carefully shaping curls before setting them to dry. The sticky, sweet smell of resin mixes with earthy oils fills the air, creating a strangely comforting workshop atmosphere. And while you're imagining this, remember that even with all this care, wigs were considered semi-perishable items. Unlike modern synthetic wigs, they required regular attention and repairs, making wig care a lifelong commitment for many. So, the next time you think of Egyptian wigs, think beyond just hair. Think of textures, scents, and craftsmanship woven into every lock, a sensory tapestry designed to delight, protect, and proclaim identity. As you sink deeper into the world of ancient Egyptian wigs, it's time to explore the delicate rituals of wig care and maintenance, because those elaborate creations didn't just appear perfectly styled and fresh. They demanded daily devotion, like a small but vital temple of beauty on the head. To begin, wigs were carefully removed at night, to give the scalp a breather and avoid overheating. Imagine a royal attendant gently lifting the heavy, jeweled headpiece with practiced hands, then setting it on a soft cushion to rest. The wig might be lightly brushed with wooden combs crafted specifically for delicate fibers, smoothing out any tangles. This wasn't just about aesthetics. Hygiene was a constant concern, especially in the Egyptian heat. Wearing a wig over sweaty, sometimes dusty hair could lead to discomfort or skin irritation, so wig washing was a ritual in itself. Wigs were cleaned with gentle mixtures, often water infused with natural soaps made from plant ashes and animal fats. Sometimes, scented oils like myrrh or frankincense were added, both for fragrance and their mild antibacterial properties. You can almost hear the quiet splash of water in a stone basin, the soft rustle of cloth wiping the delicate fibers, and the faint aroma of sweet oils filling the air. This daily care was part pampering, part practical maintenance. One quirky detail: some wig wearers kept small containers of fine powder, often made from crushed minerals like malachite or chalk, to sprinkle lightly onto their wigs. This powder absorbed excess oils and moisture, helping to keep the wig fresh longer. It's like an ancient version of dry shampoo, minus the aerosol can. Historians still argue whether these powders were used mostly by the elite or if they trickled down to common folk, but either way, the practice adds a charmingly modern touch to the picture. Repairs were a regular necessity too. Loose strands were carefully reknotted or rewoven by skilled wig makers or household attendants. Broken beads or threads were replaced, maintaining the wig's shape and sparkle. Imagine a quiet workshop where an artisan sits by candlelight, meticulously threading a golden bead back onto a braid, humming softly to pass the time. For the wealthy, this was a luxury service. For others, it might be a routine chore. And sometimes, wigs were reshaped entirely to fit changing fashions or roles, like actors swapping characters. The ability to restyle wigs was a testament to both the wig maker's skill and the wig's importance in social identity. Overall, wig care combined daily ritual, artistry, and practicality in a delicate balance. It wasn't just about looking good, it was about feeling good, staying healthy, and maintaining a connection to cultural tradition. So, as you imagine these intimate moments of grooming and care, picture the soft brush strokes, the warm scented oils, and the gentle hands at work, all creating a quiet symphony of devotion to ancient elegance. Wigs weren't just worn for everyday use. They also had an important place in Egyptian ceremonies and religious rituals, adding a layer of spiritual significance to their already practical function. Picture yourself standing in a grand temple, where the flicker of oil lamps casts long shadows on walls covered in hieroglyphs, while priests and priestesses don their sacred wigs with care and reverence. Special ceremonial wigs were often more elaborate, made from the finest human hair and adorned with gold beads, precious stones, or intricate braids symbolizing divine power or protection. Wearing such a wig wasn't simply a fashion statement, it was a sacred act, a way to connect with the gods or embody specific spiritual qualities. One fascinating fringe detail: some wigs included tiny charms or amulets woven into the strands, believed to ward off evil spirits or bring good fortune. Historians still argue whether these charms were purely symbolic or if they played an active role in ritual magic, but either way, the practice underscores the wig's spiritual weight. For example, the goddess Hathor, associated with music, fertility, and joy, was often depicted wearing a distinctive wig with cow horns and a solar disk, a visual shorthand for her divine role. Priests who served her might wear wigs echoing this style during festivals or ceremonies, channeling her presence. You can almost hear the soft chanting of hymns as the wig is lifted onto the head, the weight of tradition settling like a comforting blanket. These wigs could be heavy and hot, but the wearers bore them proudly, knowing they were stepping into a role far greater than themselves. The connection between wigs and status also played out in funerary practices. Tomb paintings often show the deceased adorned in finely crafted wigs, suggesting wigs symbolized status even beyond death. Sometimes, actual wigs were buried with their owners, preserved in the dry desert sands as part of the journey into the afterlife. Imagine the careful hands placing a wig beside the departed, an offering of dignity and identity for eternity. It's a quiet reminder of how wigs were woven into the very fabric of Egyptian life and death. Wigs could also mark social roles beyond religion. Judges, scribes, and officials wore specific styles to reflect their duties, a kind of visual shorthand for authority and respect. So, while today we might think of wigs as purely cosmetic, in ancient Egypt they were potent symbols of connection, identity, and the sacred. As you picture these solemn ceremonies, let the flickering lamplight and gentle chants lull you deeper into this ancient world, where every strand of hair told a story beyond mere appearance. As we continue this journey through the world of ancient Egyptian wigs, it's time to explore the fascinating social and gender dynamics woven into wig culture. You might assume wigs were just a pretty accessory, but they actually played a key role in signaling gender, age, and even marital status. For starters, wigs were worn by both men and women, though styles often differed. Men tended to favor shorter wigs or elaborate braided styles, while women's wigs were usually longer, more intricate, and sometimes decorated with ribbons or beads. These differences helped everyone quickly identify social cues, much like modern hairstyles can signal personality or profession. Imagine a bustling Nile riverbank where men with neat, cropped wigs negotiate boat deals while women stroll with long, flowing braids shimmering in the sunlight. Wig styles could change with age, too. Younger women might wear simpler styles, while older women opted for more dignified and layered looks. One quirky fact: young boys sometimes wore a distinctive side lock of youth, a single braided lock of hair left long on an otherwise shaved head, as a marker of childhood. When boys grew up, this lock was cut off, and they might then wear a full wig. Historians still debate whether this side lock had spiritual significance or was simply a visual age marker. Wigs could also convey marital status or rank. Certain styles or decorations were reserved for married women or priestesses, while commoners wore more modest versions. This system of visual codes helped maintain social order in a society that prized hierarchy. Interestingly, some men wore wigs to mimic the styles of powerful women, perhaps as a way to show allegiance or respect, blurring modern ideas about gender norms. And then there's the role of wig makers themselves, a mostly male profession, but with some evidence of female wig specialists working in households or temples. These artisans were custodians of beauty and social order, shaping not just hair but identity. Picture a wig maker in a small workshop surrounded by a variety of wigs, each carefully labeled for a different client, gender, or occasion. The subtle differences in braid thickness, length, and ornamentation were all deliberate, a language of hair only insiders fully understood. The practice of wig wearing also intersected with age-related customs. Elders might prefer wigs to cover thinning hair, while young nobles experimented with extravagant styles to show off their status or artistic taste. So, wigs weren't just about covering heads. They were social badges, subtle codes woven into daily life. They helped Egyptians express who they were, where they belonged, and even who they hoped to be. As you imagine these varied styles and social meanings, feel the gentle rhythm of daily life in an ancient city, where hair was much more than hair, and a wig could speak louder than words. Now, as you settle further into the calming rhythm of ancient Egypt, let's turn to a lighter but no less fascinating topic: the curious role wigs played in ancient Egyptian medicine and health practices. You might not expect wigs to double as health tools, but the Egyptians were masters of multipurpose living. For starters, wigs offered protection from the harsh sun. The Egyptian sun is relentless, and direct exposure can lead to painful sunburn and overheating. Wearing a wig created a practical barrier. Think of it as a fashionable, breathable helmet that shielded the scalp and neck from UV rays. But there's more. Some wigs were treated with medicinal herbs and oils believed to improve scalp health or even promote hair growth underneath. Imagine a wig maker mixing balms infused with rosemary, myrrh, or castor oil, then gently applying these to the fibers, offering a subtle aromatherapy effect to the wearer. Interestingly, historians still argue whether these treatments had real medicinal benefits or were mostly symbolic gestures of cleanliness and status. Either way, the ritual of applying scented oils had a soothing, relaxing effect, almost like a spa treatment, ancient style. Another health-related wig role involved hygiene. Since many Egyptians shaved their heads completely to avoid lice, wigs helped them maintain the appearance of a full head of hair while preventing infestations. The wigs themselves were regularly cleaned, as we discussed, helping to keep the scalp and hair invisible to pests. One fringe but amusing detail: some wig wearers reportedly stuffed the inside of their wigs with soft cloth or padding soaked in scented oils to keep their heads cool and comfortable. Picture this: your wig isn't just hair, it's a mini cooling system, a breathable oasis atop your head in the desert heat. And let's not forget the occasional use of wigs in minor medical disguises. Some priests and healers might wear special wigs during rituals to hide scars, skin conditions, or injuries, preserving an aura of divine perfection. Overall, wigs were not only about beauty but about practical health care, combining protection, hygiene, and even subtle healing rituals in one elegant package. So, as you picture yourself wearing a soft, fragrant wig infused with natural oils. Imagine the tiny bubbles of calm and care rising from your scalp, offering relief and relaxation after a day under the blazing sun. This gentle blend of style and health reminds us that ancient Egyptians were practical dreamers, always finding ways to marry beauty and wellness. As your eyelids grow heavier and the quiet hum of the ancient world lulls you closer to sleep, let's finish by exploring how wigs and hairpieces eventually passed from the ancient Egyptian world into other cultures, spreading their legacy in subtle and surprising ways. Trade routes like the famed Silk Road and Mediterranean sea lanes weren't just for silk and spices, they carried ideas, fashions, and beauty secrets too. Egyptian wigs, known for their quality and style, found their way into the hands of nobles and royals in Greece, Rome, and beyond. Imagine an aristocrat in ancient Rome admiring a finely braided wig imported from Egypt, marveling at its craftsmanship and the mystery it carried. Historians still debate how much the Egyptian wig tradition influenced European styles, but the evidence of similar braiding and adornments suggests a clear line of cultural exchange. These wigs also sparked innovations, with different regions adding their own twists, like Roman powdered wigs or later European powdered styles. Back in Egypt, as dynasties changed and fashions evolved, wigs gradually lost their exclusive religious and social symbolism. They became more of a daily convenience and less a sacred statement. One quirky fact: during certain periods, fake wigs made from vegetable fibers or even palm leaves were used by poorer people who couldn't afford the expensive human hair versions. It's a humble reminder that wig culture touched all levels of society, even if in different ways. By the time the Roman Empire faded, wigs were firmly established as symbols of status, fashion, and identity, carrying echoes of ancient Egypt's pioneering style. Now, as you gently drift away from this world of fragrant oils, braided tresses, and ancient rituals, remember that every strand of hair you've imagined today carries stories of care, culture, and connection, threads tying us across millennia. Let your mind float on these soft images: the scent of myrrh, the quiet brush strokes, the warmth of the sun shielded by woven hair, and feel the peace that comes from stepping into a history both strange and strangely familiar. Soon, the night will take you completely, and your dreams might just dance with ancient Egyptian courtiers, their elegant wigs swaying gently in a timeless breeze. Sleep well, knowing the care of centuries rests lightly on your head. As you begin to drift away, let the images of softly woven wigs and fragrant oils fade gently into the quiet darkness around you. The warmth of the desert sun, now a distant memory, gives way to the cool night air. Your thoughts slow, like the gentle ebb of the Nile, flowing calmly and steadily toward rest. Each braid and ribbon you've imagined becomes a whisper of history, a soft thread weaving through the fabric of time, connecting you to those who cared for their hair with as much devotion as you care for your own peace tonight. Feel the comfort of knowing that these rituals, centuries old, were small acts of kindness and self-care, simple moments of calm in a busy world. The soothing scent of ancient oils lingers faintly in your mind, a balm to your senses, inviting your thoughts to settle and your body to relax. You are surrounded by the quiet dignity of a civilization that understood the power of routine and the gentle art of looking after oneself. Now, with the last flicker of lamplight gone, your breathing slows and deepens. The world outside fades, and only the softness remains. You are safe, cradled by history's tender embrace, ready to slip into dreams as serene as the Nile at dusk. Good night.